يا هلا 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 حن قلبي على جمعة الخير هلا حن قلبي على جمعة الخير هلا يا 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 هلا
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to the program with me, Julie Alli, on another edition of Let's Talk. Lots of interesting things coming your way, and I do sincerely hope you're going to keep me company right up until 10 this morning. We'll be talking ADHD with an educational psychologist, Melanie Hartkill. We're also going to be talking about Israeli Apartheid Week with Zinat Adam and Abdul Razak Nurbai, and we'll be wrapping up about and talking about life coaching. Is it important? What does it do for you? Will it help you at all to achieve your goals and your ambitions? So that's what's coming up in the show this morning, including two lovely giveaways from Amka and a lovely sweet hamper from Broadway Sweets. And to qualify for one of those, you know what to do. You have to call in and keep me company. Whatever's on your mind, whatever questions or comments you might have, we're very, very happy to hear from you. So do keep us company. We are with you right up until 10 o'clock. Welcome to the program, and let's introduce our first guest on the show this morning, and that is our educational psychologist, Melanie Hartkill. Good morning. Welcome to the show.
Thanks very much for having me.
Great to have you in the studio. So, Melanie, we're talking about ADHD this morning, and we're also going to touch on the difference between ADHD and ADD.
Yes.
But before we get there, tell us a little bit about yourself. You're an educational psychologist. What exactly do you guys do?
You'll be surprised how often we get asked that question.
Okay.
Technically, we are child psychologists. So anyone linked to any children in the educational setting, but we can also see adults linked to educational settings as well. So anything that's developmental, we would deal with. So essentially, we would do any and all therapy through the childhood years, any childhood disorders we would deal with, and then we would do assessments with the same age group as well.
Okay, so today we're going to talk ADD and ADHD, attention deficit disorder and hyperactivity disorder. What's the difference between the two?
The ADD is attention deficit disorder. It basically is a child that doesn't have the hyperactive side with it. So technically, when we do a diagnosis now, we talk about ADHD, and then we talk about the predominant presentation. So we would classify all the children as ADHD, but then we would say predominantly inattentive or predominantly hyperactive, or whatever the case was with that individual child.
Okay, so for the purposes of this program, we could jump from the one to the other. Is a child with ADHD that much more difficult to deal with and to perhaps for the parents and you as a psychologist to work with and to help get over the condition? Do you ever get over it?
Research actually suggests that 60% of diagnosed children will still be showing signs of ADHD into adolescence and adulthood. The reality of the situation is no one ever really fully gets over it. They just find ways of coping. So some simply cope better than others. Ideally, the earlier they are treated, the earlier they're identified, the sooner we can treat and intervene, and they then have a better prognosis. We're more likely to have fewer effects from the ADHD than the child who only gets diagnosed when they're older.
Mm-hmm. It also, it said that ADHD is one of the most common childhood conditions involving the brain, and also that between 5 to 8% of children present with the condition.
That's right.
And 3 out of, when you look at the statistics, more boy children present with the condition than girl children. Why is that?
Well, boys are 3 times more likely to have the condition than girls are. To be honest with you, it all seems to be hereditary. So there is always a family connection somewhere. Within 1 or 2 generations, there will be somebody else who has ADHD. We're not entirely sure why boys are more likely to present than girls. The one thing we do know is that girls present differently to boys. They're far less likely to have the H component, the hyperactivity side. So they tend to be a little bit more daydreamy, a little bit more inattentive, and therefore easier to miss than the boy is, who's sitting there bouncing and fidgeting and just can't keep still during a classic class lesson.
All right, let's ask the all-important question. What exactly is ADD and ADHD?
Okay. There are 4 main elements that we need to look at when we talk about ADHD. The first one is a child who is inattentive. So this is a child who's unable to remain focused and concentrate. So these are the kids that aren't finishing their tasks. They're finding something else to do. They sit for 5 minutes and then they're busy doing something else. They just simply cannot sustain that focus. You've then got the distractibility, and this is actually a really key component, because what research is actually showing us is, obviously distractibility means they're aware of other elements going on at the same time, but research actually suggests they can't discriminate between foreground and background noise, which means what the teacher is saying is as dominant in their brain as the whispered conversation 2 rows behind them, and that's as dominant as the conversation outside with the 2 teachers who are walking down the corridor. So they're not isolating sounds like a normal person would do, insofar as this is the person speaking to me and other background noises fade away. They don't do that. So the distractibility is a big component.
Which means they're missing out a lot.
So they're missing out a lot. Yeah. I just realised I used the word normal person. I meant more neurotypical, the person who is not distracted. You can't define normality. You've then also got the impulsivity as one of the components. So this is the child who's acting without thinking. So they're simply just not... They don't ever think about what it is they're supposed to do, so they blurt out answers, they interrupt. The literal look before you leap, that would never cross their mind. They will act, and then afterwards they'll think about whatever it is that they've done. And then the last component you've got is the hyperactivity. So these are the fidgeters. This isn't seen as dominantly in adolescents and adults, simply because they learn to control it a little more. So instead of being unable to remain seated in their chair, they do sit in their chair, but they've got a chair with wheels on, so they're scooting around just a little bit, or their feet are going, or they're constantly sort of sitting, tapping, or finding something that they can fidget and twist or chew gum. So it becomes a less obvious exuberant activity, and it's more confined, but it's often actually still there.
When you talk about adults, fidgeting and chewing and tapping their feet and fingers, etc., is that indicative of the fact that they may have ADHD and not even be aware of it?
There would be other signs that go along with it, but certainly being excessively fidgety and always needing to have something going and moving and being active, it would certainly suggest further investigation, yes.
Mm-hmm. Now we talk about ADD and ADHD. I should imagine the ones more difficult to treat or counsel. I'm not sure what's the right terminology here. Do you treat children or do you counsel them? How does it work?
Actually, ideally you do both.
Mm-hmm.
So we do talk about treatment, so we talk about early intervention and we talk about treating the children. But the reality of it is there is no one cure, and there's certainly no one technique that's going to work with every child who's presenting with attention difficulties. So you're going to have to look at that individual child and figure out what's going on with them in terms of how you need to intervene. 50% of children who are diagnosed with ADHD have other associated learning problems. So what often happens is they get given a tablet to help them deal with the concentration, but the problems at school don't seem to go away, and that could be because there's an underlying learning difficulty there, and so they've dealt with the concentration, but they haven't then addressed the difficulties in the classroom that are going to continue impacting on the child.
So you, as an educational psychologist, would you be able to pick up the underlying issues and be able to address them? Because it's no good, like you say, treating them with medication. And that's very controversial. We're going to touch on that in a minute or two. But would you be able to pick up the underlying condition, issues, and would you be able to treat them? Because often, they're not picked up, and it seems that things just get worse for the child. He becomes very disruptive and inattentive and labelled as either naughty or stupid or whatever, and then, lives under this label for the rest of his life and just feels like he's useless. And I'm also wondering, are these the type of children, if not caught in time, diagnosed and treated, would these be your problem teenagers and problem adults guys that just do not have focus in their lives and then just fall off the track, so to speak?
So to start with your first question, ideally any diagnosis is a very comprehensive assessment battery as part of a multidisciplinary team. So you need to rule out any other neurological conditions, you need to rule out visual difficulties, hearing difficulties, and then you've got to look at all aspects of the child's functioning, from coordination to speech to their cognitive ability and their academic side as well. So ideally there's quite a large team of people involved in making that diagnosis. The earlier we identify the difficulty, the sooner we can actually start intervening and treating, and that gives a better prognosis for how the child's going to be able to cope. Those that don't receive intervention for whatever the reason, they go undiagnosed or they simply don't comply with treatment plans, whatever the case may be, those are the ones who are more likely to have difficulties as teenagers, and it's often then emotional difficulties, low self-esteem, lack of confidence, stupid, impulsive behaviours without thinking it through, and that makes them a target for the other children to, you know, dare them to do things, or for them to fall in touch with a group of people.
Them
exactly.
Doing silly things.
Exactly. But then also fall in line with the group of kids who are smoking dope or cigarettes or drinking, because they act before they think it through, and they've got low self-esteem, and here's a group of kids who accept them
and pay attention, to them,
and they just go with it.
Needed attention. Very sad indeed.
It is.
Do you think that these type of screenings should become almost compulsory as far as children are concerned?
Yes, I do, to a large extent. More and more schools are insisting on school readiness assessments nowadays, and I know a lot of people, parents, feel that it's not necessary. But the reality of the situation is the assessment battery itself is fairly innocuous. It's not a threatening environment. It doesn't stress the children or anything like that. Well, most of them anyway. If they have elevated levels of anxiety, it can bother them. But on the whole, it's quite an easy, laid-back process, and it allows us to get a good, comprehensive image of the child as they start school. So if there is something like an ADHD or any other learning difficulty for that matter, we can probably pick it up nice and early. It does also mean that if the child copes well with the first couple of years and then hits a snag later on, we've got a baseline to actually compare it to, so we can see if the developmental phases were where they should have been at the time the child started school. Maybe they were a little bit young for their age and not 100% ready, but they went through anyway, and now that difficulty is catching up with them a few years later. So I do think a comprehensive initial screening is actually important, and a lot of the nursery schools I know are doing eye tests and hearing tests on a regular basis too, and I think that's just as important.
Okay, let's go for our first ad break, and when we get back we will be continuing our talk with Melanie Hartgill. She's an educational psychologist, and after the break we will be opening our lines and you can join us with comments, questions, and even put yourself in line to win one of our wonderful prizes being given away today. A sweet hamper from Broadway Sweets and 2 hampers from AMCA. It's Amla Oil with the compliments from AMCA. So don't forget to call in and keep us company, inshallah. Welcome back. You're with me, Julie Alli, on Let's Talk. I do hope you're going to stay with us till 10 o'clock this morning. We are talking to Melanie Hartgill about ADD and ADHD. And if you have any questions or comments, we're happy to take your calls. You can call us. The number will be scrolling at the bottom of the screen. And of course, we also have 3 giveaways. 2 from AMCA, and I believe it's hampers of Amla Oil. And we also have a lovely sweet hamper from Broadway Sweet. So you can stand in line to win one of these hampers by simply calling in and just making a comment or perhaps asking a question. We're more than happy to hear from you. We're with you till 10 o'clock, do remember, so call in and keep us company, inshallah. Melanie, back to you, ADD and ADHD. I understand that there are 3 different types of ADHD. What would they be, and why are they categorized in the way they are?
The main reason for categorizing it is so that we know exactly what treatment options and plans we need to be considering. So your 3 main areas are predominantly inattentive, predominantly hyperactive, and a combined type, and that they pretty much speak for themselves. So your predominantly inattentive child is the child who may not actually show any signs of hyperactivity, so that would be your classic ADD. So that's the child who simply can't focus, doesn't remain on task, easily distracted, but they're still and quiet, and on that side they don't have the fidgeting and what have you.
Can I just interrupt and ask, at what stage, because as you're speaking I'm thinking about my 3-year-old granddaughter and thinking, oh goodness, is she perhaps suffering from one of the conditions? But I'm sure that's pretty normal for a 2 or a 3-year-old to have a short attention span and to be interested in everything going on around them and jumping from task to task. When should parents really be concerned? When should the red flags go up and parents think that there's something wrong with this child, I need to have him or her assessed?
I think this is exactly what one of the problems is with ADHD. The behaviours we're seeing are developmentally appropriate at certain stages. It's when you move beyond that stage that it's no longer appropriate. So if you take your 2 or 3-year-old, for them to only have a short attention span and stay on task for a short period of time and easily be distracted and be very active and busy and impulsive, that's perfectly normal. Put those same behaviours in a 5 or 6-year-old and suddenly it's not as appropriate. So ideally we make the diagnosis a year or 2 years before the child enters into formal schooling. But that's why it needs to be part of a multidisciplinary team, and we need to get feedback from as many people involved with this child as possible, because we need to ensure that the behaviours that we're seeing as problematic aren't neurotypical for the developmental stage that the child's in, but we also need to make sure that it's occurring across the board. If the problems are only occurring in one situation, then there's a problem with the one situation, not necessarily with the child. So if the child simply can't sustain focus on the sports field, but they do okay everywhere else, it's not ADD. The problem is with that particular sporting activity or something there, and you've got to look at it in that bigger picture, in the bigger context. So ideally you have feedback from the teachers, from the parents, from any other people who are involved with the child on a regular basis, as well as then having all the therapists and the assessors and the doctors and everybody else involved.
Now, a child that obviously is taken for all of these tests, 5 onwards, they're at school, they get taken away from the classroom for about a half an hour or half a day for mom to take them for all the tests. They come back into the school environment and start getting teased. We know that children in their innocence can be so horribly cruel. And these kids get teased, obviously making a further dent into their self-esteem. What's the best way for mom and dad to support this child so that he or she does not become more destructive or just feel I'm a hopeless case?
To be fair, more and more children are being assessed every day, and it's almost becoming the norm. So that is less of a target reason from other children. But one of the problems you often have with the ADHD child is the teacher constantly saying, Johnny, you need to focus. Johnny, listen to me. Johnny, what did I say? And there's constant, because the child's busy looking here and looking there, and it's the constant comments from the teacher to refocus. So a lot of it depends on how the teacher handles it that will determine how the children then respond. Because if it sounds like the teacher's constantly nagging the one kid, that will be the kid the others target in order to pick on. But a lot of the time there's huge emotional components that go along with things like ADHD. They are quite often not aware that what they're doing is different to what other people are doing. It's like glasses. If you need to have glasses on, you will always see something with blurry vision. You think that's perfectly normal until the day you have a pair of glasses fitted and realise life doesn't really look like that at all. And it's the same with an inattentive child. They don't realise that other people do things differently. This is how their brain works. And someone said to me years ago, and I think they had a very valid point, we always talk about it being a deficit, an attention deficit, but actually it's almost an over-focus, because it's not that they can't, it's not that they're not picking up the information, they're picking up all of the information. They're picking up too much. So they're aware of the TV, the lights, the bird outside, the traffic, the teacher talking, and they're busy processing and dealing with everything, and so their attention is actually flitting. So it's not that they can't sustain focus, they're almost trying to sustain focus on too many areas, and it just simply doesn't work. But they don't realise it's any different to anybody else.
One grave misconception, children with ADD and ADHD are often labelled as stupid or lazy. And I hate the word stupid, but unfortunately it is used, overused. How do we, can you put that myth to rest? Are they stupid? Does it mean that a child with ADD or ADHD is going to be less academically inclined or, you know, at the end of the school, 12 years of school, is not going to get a university pass, etc.?
Cognitive ability actually isn't one of the defining factors for a diagnosis of ADHD. So a child could range anywhere on that sort of cognitive spectrum, from being a low or below average child all the way up to being an above average superior child. So that side of it actually is neither here nor there. One of the biggest problems that I have, though, is quite often the performance we see in the classroom is as a direct result of the ADHD, not really as a direct result of the child's cognitive ability. So quite often they're capable of far more than they show, but because they're halfway through the task and something happens outside the window and they're sitting staring out the window, they then don't finish the task, so the teacher only gets 3 out of 10 sums completed, of which they've made one really silly mistake, so actually they only get 2 out of 10, and suddenly they're being labelled as being a stupid child. Whereas the context in which they didn't complete that task was completely different to stupid. I hate that word, stupid. I think it should just be banned across the board, because it's a frustrating one, because our school system focuses predominantly on 2 types of intelligence: mathematical and spatial intelligence, and linguistic or verbal intelligence. There's a whole lot of other intelligences that don't even begin to feature, such as interpersonal, intrapersonal, musical ability, natural ability, so, you know, being involved with nature and gardening and plants and animals and those sort of things. We don't touch on any of those. So when we claim a child is stupid or cognitively incapable, even when we do a traditional IQ test, we're still only focusing on that verbal and non-verbal ability. And it's 2 very small areas of what make up that whole child. So any time you label somebody as stupid, you're doing them a disservice anyway, because there's going to be areas somewhere, even if it's not the traditional ones measured by an IQ test or looked at in the classroom situation.
Okay, we're talking to Melanie Hartkill. She's an educational psychologist. We're talking ADD and ADHD, but right now we have a call online. Fatima, Assalamu alaikum, welcome to the program.
Walaikum salam. I'd like to ask a question. I have 2 children that are ADHD, and my daughter is in music, and my son always finished matric. So I just want to know what careers are suitable for them.
Okay, over to you, Melanie. Would you like to respond?
I would like to respond, actually. You know, a number of years ago I was at a conference where somebody said that the people with ADHD back in the caveman days, they were the hunters. Those were the ones who, although they had a target, they were aware of everything else going on in their environment. They had to be, because they didn't know if there was an animal going to creep up behind and attack them. So there's always something else going on with these children. So an ADHD child, in terms of career, needs to be able to make use of their very strengths. Everybody always focuses on the negatives, the fact that they don't finish tasks, that they're distracted, that they're always talking, that they're always fidgeting. But the fact is, they've got so many things going on in their brain that they are processing ideas, and they're creative, and they're thinking out of the box, and they're seeing things in a different way. Those are the careers that we need to be looking at for them, so they can use those strengths and abilities. So things that involve design, graphic design, architecture, advertising, something where they've got to stand and talk and talk and talk and think on their feet. They are brilliant at that. Sales type things, you know, where they're promoting elements for other people and trying to get things sold or known about. Those are amazing careers for them to be in. Anything that sort of keeps them busy and on their toes, so that they don't have that mundane day in, day out, sitting at the same desk, working on the same computer, doing the same thing. That's never going to be a job satisfying career for them to be in.
Okay, Fatima, I do hope that that answers your question. And back to you, Melanie. What causes ADD and ADHD?
We don't really have a full answer for that. As I mentioned earlier, we know that there's a genetic component, and neurological testing shows that there are differences in the neurotransmitters of the brain, which is why medication is quite often one of the ways we try and treat it. But in terms of who's going to have it and why, we really don't have a satisfactory answer for that.
Okay, we're almost at the end of the interview. I can't believe how time flies. 2 very important questions. Diet, and, you know, sugar's been in the news lately. Or how does that impact on a child with ADD and ADHD? Your diet and too much sugar, for example.
Okay. Diet alone is not going to be the main cause or the main treatment option. However, it definitely does play a significant role. Our diet in general has changed dramatically more recently, because we don't eat what I call whole foods, natural foods that look like they actually were. So an orange that looks like an orange, as opposed to something that's been processed and gone through the mill and have chemicals and additives. that actually is where one of the problems comes in. So yes, sugar is one of the issues, but children who don't have ADHD can respond negatively to excessive sugars. So diet should be, there's a really simple rule. If you look at the package on the back of the label on the back of the packet, if you can't pronounce some of those words, you shouldn't be eating it.
Okay. And finally, Ritalin, the demon of the whole show. Lots of parents are very anti-Ritalin because they believe that Ritalin makes little zombies out of their children. Your take on Ritalin: should children be given medication to control their condition, or rather keep away from it and be a very supportive parent and try and help your child to the best of your ability?
Because ADHD is known to have differences with or problems with the neurotransmitters, the medication actually does deal with that directly. So it should be one part of the overall treatment process. But for some children, their ADHD is mild enough that they can get away with not having the medication. Ritalin is actually a stimulant, and it shouldn't have sedating effects on the child. So if it is, the dosage is wrong, or it's the wrong type of medication for that particular child. But bear in mind, as I said earlier, 50% of children diagnosed with ADHD have an underlying learning disability of another sort. So giving a tablet is not necessarily going to fix the bigger picture of the child. It has to be one part of an overall treatment plan.
And unfortunately, that's all we have time for. It is time for us to move on. Melanie, thank you indeed for being with us on the show this morning. And right now, time for us to take our second ad break. We do hope that you've enjoyed this part of the program. We were talking ADD and ADHD with Melanie Hartkill, an educational psychologist based in Orange Grove in Johannesburg. Assalamu alaikum, welcome back to Let's Talk. I do hope that you've enjoyed the first segment of the show. Next up, we're going to be talking about Israeli Apartheid Week, and our first guest on that segment is Zeenat Adam. Assalamu alaikum, welcome Zeenat.
Walaikum salam, Julie. It's so lovely to be speaking to you again.
Likewise. Now, before we talk about Israeli Apartheid Week, I know the last time I touched sides with you, you were working for the Department of Foreign Affairs, am I right?
It was quite some time ago. I've left them since then and been independent as a consultant for a while. I think we had chatted once after that regarding women in conflict regions.
Okay, great. So Israeli Apartheid Week, I should imagine you've had a very, very hectic week. Can you tell us the, just how it played out this week? And what was the purpose of having this week? Was it specific to South Africa, or was this happening worldwide?
Well, Julie, I'm going to be speaking a little bit more focused in terms of one of the events that we held during Israeli Apartheid Week in South Africa, and that was the launch of the women's boat to Gaza. This is an international effort by the Freedom Flotilla Coalition and supported by the Palestinian Solidarity Alliance in South Africa. The launch took place on the 8th of March, which coincided with International Women's Day, and fantastically, it worked well within Israeli Apartheid Week as well. So we had the official launch on Tuesday evening at Roasted Coriander in Greenside. That was from the South African part. But internationally, the launch took place in Sicily, and my colleague Shabnam Mayat was representing us at the international group. This initiative is an idea of having a women's boat to go and break the blockade of Gaza. The idea is that the boat will leave in mid-September from the Mediterranean, stop along the way, and reach Gaza by the 1st of October. Of course, we have a lot of challenges leading up to that and planning around how we're going to execute this. As part of the Freedom Flotilla Coalition, I think it's important to note that this is something that began in 2009, when shortly after Israeli incursions into Gaza had resulted in Operation Cast Lead. And that caused some of the most horrific war crimes that we have ever seen, with the use of white phosphorus, with the indiscriminate killing of children, women, and other civilians. The Freedom Flotilla Coalition decided to launch the Mavi Mamra, and I think many of you will remember that that was one of the most tragic events that had happened. The idea was that a flotilla would leave from Turkey, supported by the IHH, and go as a humanitarian initiative. It was intercepted by the IDF, and brutally 10 people were killed. Others were abused and hurt terribly. Following that incident, the Freedom Flotilla Coalition had attempted on several other occasions to launch a few other flotilla missions on humanitarian basis to break the Gaza blockade. All of these were intercepted. The boats were confiscated by the IDF, and people have been harmed, perhaps not as brutally as the Mavi Mamra incident, but still really terribly affected by that. In 2013, there was another attempt, which was quite a unique idea, to have a Gaza Ark that would be built in Gaza. It would be loaded with products that have been produced in Gaza, and that would then support the Gazans in terms of their economy once that boat would leave for the international waters and to sell their product. The production was brought to a complete halt because the Israeli Defense Force bombed the area where the Gaza Ark was being built. And so this was sabotaged once again. What we're looking at now is solidarity with Palestinian women. We know that they have been so strongly a part of this fight against occupation, and very little credence is given to the work that they've done. If we think back to the Intifada, women had been at the forefront of the fight, and we have role models like Leila Khalid, for example. But there are other women who have been imprisoned, who have been killed. This week, we saw a young woman in Jerusalem being killed, apparently because she had tried to knife some soldiers. But this is a recurring issue, and we've seen that knives have been planted on people. And so they're not necessarily out there to attack the Israelis, and yet they're being killed in the process. What we want to do is highlight the role of women. And in doing so, this Boat to Gaza is a wholly women-run project. The women are behind the scenes, the women will be part of the crew, and there will be only women on board as activists and as supporters of the cause.
Zeenat, you say it's going to be an all-women flotilla going to Gaza. I should imagine it's going to be filled with very needed supplies, medication, food, etc. Who are these women? Where are you getting them from? And I presume they're going to be paying for everything out of their own pockets. You probably will be doing a fundraiser, but the actual passage to Gaza will be funded out of each and every individual woman's own pocket. Would I be thinking that?
Julie, we are trying to raise funds. It is an expensive exercise, and we would certainly be conducting a number of events and activities to try and raise funds towards this. And we would really appeal to the South African public to please donate either through the Palestinian Solidarity Alliance or directly to the Women's Boat to Gaza. Yes, women are going to form part of this, but at this stage we're unable to announce who those women are. They will be coming from various countries. The coalition currently has about 6 or 7 countries on board. South Africa is the only African country and probably the only developing country on board right now. So we're in a little bit more of a difficult situation financially to be able to fund our involvement in it. But the women from Palestine want us there. They find a strong solidarity with South Africans and with South African women. And more importantly, we're also aligning this to the 60-year anniversary of the Women's March to the Union buildings. We're also looking at it as the decade of women in Africa. So we really have to have a presence of South Africans on this mission. In terms of the names, due to security reasons at this stage, we're not able to announce who would be part of it. And the international committee is sitting to vet the individuals who have been nominated. Possibly closer to the time we would be able to announce. These are activists, these are women who have been prominent in their own right. some who are famous, and we're also looking for anyone else out there to just come forward and endorse this project. Put your name to it. Julie, we'd love to have you as a patron on board as well, at least to give us that kind of support, being such a prominent person in media.
So at this point in time, Zenit, people watching us feel that they can make a meaningful contribution, maybe not monetarily, which you obviously are welcoming in a very big way. So people with big hearts and deep pockets watching us this morning can get in touch with you and make their necessary contribution and support. But for women who are wanting to join the flotilla, what is the criteria?
Well, at this stage, it is limited in terms of women who can actually be on board of the flotilla. But what we want women in South Africa to be doing is to be supporting us in terms of solidarity. In all of your own communities, your localities, in every province, we, of course, would be leading in terms of projects and events leading up to the launch of the boat. But we want women in their own communities to take the lead, to come forward and say, we would like to have an event, maybe a film festival, maybe a poetry jam, maybe some kind of a fundraising event or awareness, and we'll be happy to support that. And we want to have unity in doing so throughout the country. Right now, it's centrally focused in Johannesburg, and that's simply because of where the resources lie, but we want to reach out as widely as possible. We've had strong support from Cape Town as well, and I'm sure we will be seeing that from the other big cities like Durban, Port Elizabeth, and others.
That's where we leave it, Zena, but inshallah we will talk to you closer to the time. You did say it was in September, and then you can give us another update, inshallah. All the very best. I'm sure you're going to get lots and lots of response from this interview. Go well, and Assalamu alaikum to you.
Wa alaikum salam. Jazakallah khair, Julie.
That was Zenit Adam talking to us about the women's flotilla that will be leaving. I think it will depart from Turkey sometime in September. It's an all-woman flotilla taking much-needed supplies and provisions to Gaza. So if you want to make, make your mark, make a difference and make a meaningful contribution, you can get in touch with Zenit Adam or one of the Palestinian organizations, support organizations based in South Africa. We're going for an ad break, and when we get back, our lines will be open. For those of you who would like to comment or make some meaningful contribution to the show, we're very happy to take your calls. And remember, we have a couple of giveaways: a beautiful sweet hamper from Broadway Sweets and 2 hampers of amla oil from Amka. So that's our giveaways for this morning. Call in, and who knows, you'll be standing in line to win one of those. But first, an ad break. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to Let's Talk. We're into the next segment of our show. We're going to be talking to Abdul Razak Noorbai. It is anti-Israeli apartheid week, and we're going to focus a little bit on Abdul Razak, his love for the Palestinian cause, inshallah. And don't forget that later on in the program, we will be announcing the winners of our hampers. 2 amla oil hampers from Amka and a lovely sweet hamper from Broadway Sweets. And to win one of these, all you have to do is to call in and share a comment with us. Or perhaps you want to make a suggestion for a future program. We're happy to hear from you. But it's over to Abdul Razak Noorbai. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to the show.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Shukran for having me. It's been a pleasure to be on your show
today. It's our pleasure entirely. Now, Abdul Razak, I know that you're very, very involved. You're a hard community worker in the Bosmont, Riverlea, Florida areas, Maritzburg, that's where you reside. You really have worked tirelessly in these areas, but I also know that your heart is with the Palestinian people. You have a deep love and affinity and support for the Palestinian people. And in keeping with anti-Israeli apartheid week or Israeli apartheid week, you have some very strong thoughts about the week that's gone by, and your love and passion for these for the Palestinians. You've even written a book, or you're busy writing a book. Tell us how this all started for you.
I think first and foremost, everybody has an affinity with Palestine, being linked with Masjid al-Quds. the first Qibla of the Muslim community. And we know from our youth days that we have been actively involved in the liberation struggle from our school days of what's transpired in the country, the South African context of apartheid. And as you grow older and you become more acclimatized with what's happening in the global community, you know, you see that what's taking place in Palestine and the atrocities that are ongoing there, it's close on to almost 70 years. What really drew me very, very close to the Palestinian issue was more so it took place in 2014 with the onslaught in the month of Ramadan, what happened in Palestine, the bombings on Gaza and so forth. And we had a huge outcry from our communities throughout the country, in fact throughout from the global community as such. I was in Cape Town. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed me with the birth of my first grandchild, and spent the month of Ramadan in Cape Town, and I was really taking note of the events that were taking place. We all went and we marched and we screamed and we shouted and we had our placards and everything, you know, and then everything subsided. Somehow the other, Ramadan came to an end, the Palestinian issue, the Gaza issue was sort of forgotten. We also kind of became complacent, and we went into our comfort zones. I got home and I started doing research because I write a column for a community newspaper on a regular basis. And between myself and the editor of the community paper, being Joburg Express, we said, listen, let's do an article called Gaza on Fire on a monthly basis. And the research eventually, over a 1.5 period, a year, led into what's going to be now into an outcoming booklet. We also have to take cognizance of the atrocities that's happening in the Middle East as such. But the Palestinian issue is specifically close to my heart because it's almost on to 70 years. We know that
and their condition hasn't bettered, it's worsened over the time.
It hasn't. It hasn't bettered. It's worsened over the years. And you get to know people and you get to meet people that's been to Palestine, that's visited there. And in my work that I'm busy doing also, I've regularly visited the Palestinian embassy, you know, interacted with the ambassador. Somehow or the other, the Almighty played a role where the city of Johannesburg last year had a twinning agreement with the city of Ramallah on Human Rights Day, which is coming again close by. I met with the mayor of Ramallah, Musa Hadid. We had quite a few chats. We engaged in very meaningful dialogue. I met with his committee from the city of Ramallah. And this led on to other things, where I got invited when there was a Christian delegation here from Palestine. Somehow or the other I was placed there as well. And spoke to a reverend from Palestine, you know, on the issues that's taking place there. And I was quite shocked when he told me, you know, his house was occupied by the Israelis, and all what they did was they just sort of bricked up his bathroom facility. So he had the usage of his home. He didn't have the use of his bathroom facility. And I thought, which regime does that, especially to a man of the cloth? When Khalid Michal was invited here, I was again at the event. I met with him, spoke to him. We chatted privately for quite some time.
Just for the benefit of the viewers, who is Khalid Michal?
Khalid Michal was the current leader of Hamas, who was invited here, you know, by the leading political party. Not by the dispensation as such, but by the party. And I was there and I met with him, and this even prompted me further to say, you know, you better go and do some more research. And I've done all that research, and it's culminated now. That's going to go into a book.
What is the book called?
The book has been aptly named Reflections on Palestine, Free Gaza. Yes, there's been a lot of debates on the names and things like that, but I felt it's synonymous to stick to with Free Gaza.
Okay.
It's been in the limelight. It's been throughout the media. It's you know, everybody knows when they speak of Free Gaza, and there's been suggestions, give it another name, don't give it the name Free Gaza, but we've added reflections on Palestine and Free Gaza. My book was supposed to be launched now in line with Israeli Apartheid Week. Unfortunately, that has not taken place.
And what's the reason for the delay?
Well, the reason for the delay is I gave out draft copies to various individuals and organizations for them to review the book. And alhamdulillah, I'd like to say the Al-Quds Foundation has endorsed my book. The MJC has also endorsed the book. I'm just waiting for another 2-3 individuals and organizations to come forth. They are still busy reviewing. So that's what's, you know, but the Almighty works in His way. What you plan, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala plans much better. He has something much better in store for you. Which I would have loved to have that also coinciding with Human Rights Day coming up on the 21st of March. But nonetheless, you know, I'm taking it in my stride every day as it comes. The draft form has been finally finalized, and so inshallah the book is going to be going into print within the next 10 days or so, hopefully.
So once the book is in print, where can we buy the books from? Will it be through main outlets, or will you? Yes,
I will be promoting the book through main outlets. A lot of the book will also be available from myself. I have also been questioned on the book, the proceeds of the sales of the book. 75% of the proceeds of the sale from the book is going to go for the Gaza Water Project.
MashaAllah.
I have been in discussions with Al-Imdad Foundation, and I've chosen them, not to say that the other organizations are not doing a noble work, but this was my choice. I've been actively engaging with Brother Yaqub Wahid from Al-Imdad via WhatsApp, and I've decided that 75% of that will go towards the Gaza Water Project, because in my research I questioned myself and I asked, how far do I have to walk for a glass of water? From my bedroom to my kitchen, or from my lounge to my kitchen? And when I looked at the Palestinian children that walk more than 5 kilometers for just a glass of water or for a bucket of water, and only to come to find that the resource that's been there for them has been blown away. So inshallah, I'm appealing to the community out there to purchase the booklet. Proceeds will go towards the Gaza project, and also to support Sister Zinat in her project as well.
Ameen, ameen. I know you were very keen on reading out, you know, some verses or chapters of the book to us here on air this morning, but unfortunately we have run out of time. But do you have a picture of the cover of the book? Can you just show it up to the camera? Is that the cover? Is that what it's going to look like, the finished product?
More or less, this is going to be...
All right, do you want to show it? Just hold it up to the camera, yes? Okay, brilliant. It's beautiful. I love the... who did the illustration?
The illustration has been basically available, you know, throughout on social media and so forth, you know. I think it's become now a household identity on this illustration. There might be a couple of changes on it as well. I think that, you
know, they say a picture speaks a thousand words, and I think that picture definitely speaks 1,000 words. I'd stick with that if it were my choice. But that then brings us to the end of this interview. Very short, but thank you indeed for being with us. And may Allah reward you for all your efforts, and I do hope that the books will fly off the shelves, inshallah.
Inshallah, inshallah. Shukran for having me on the show, and wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Welcome back. Assalamu alaikum. This is the final segment of Let's Talk this Saturday morning. I do hope you're enjoying the show with us. And we do want you to call in. We have 3 prizes to give away: a lovely sweet hamper from Broadway Sweets and 2 hampers from Amca. It's Amla oil hampers. So you want your hair to be lustrous, luscious and beautiful? Well, call in with a comment or a question and you can stand in line to win one of those hampers. Next up, we're going to be talking to Razia Mohammed. She is a life coach, and we're going to talk about how going to a life coach can possibly change your life. Assalamu alaikum to you. Welcome.
Walaikum salam. Thank you so much for having me.
It's a pleasure having you here. Razia, I've always been under the impression that life coaches are only used for athletes if you want to get maximum performance. So if you're in the sporting arena, a life coach works for you best and that's it.
Right.
What, am I wrong in thinking that?
Well, I would say that like how your sporting arena, you need motivation, you need empowerment, you need to be able to get from A to B in a productive and progressive way. You would apply those same principles to your own life as well.
Okay, before we go into life coaching, how it can enhance you as a person, tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you, I was pleasantly surprised when I heard that my guest is a Muslim female talking to us about life coaching. And I thought, wow, that's really something. How did you, get into life coaching?
I'm in this kind of business for the past 16 years now. So I've always been in it on a psychology level. Now, on a psychology level, you're not allowed to advise, you're not allowed to give your opinion. So all you're allowed to say is, how does it make you feel?
To listen.
And then you direct your client, yes, to listen.
Yes.
And the one day I went to a Cecil function, and this guy was so energetic, he was all over the place, and I had to speak to him. And that's when he told me that he's a life coach. So I researched all of those things about 8 years ago, and I decided this is what I want to be. So a life coach is someone where you sit across from them and they direct you in a way that they think is productive for you. So I would direct you in ways that will empower you and motivate you on a level and a point where you would actually be the change that you would like to see in your world.
Okay, so let's look at this a little differently. Mm-hmm. Let's assume I'm just an ordinary stay-at-home mom and housewife. My life's not really going anywhere. I'm possibly in an abusive relationship as well. How would life coaching change my circumstances, change me as a woman, as opposed to going to a psychologist, for example, or a counselor to talk about my problems?
Okay, I use a process called NLP, which is called Neuro-Linguistic Programming. So that's just a fancy term for me working with your subconscious mind in order to sift out the beliefs that limit your growth. So that is what I would do. I would say the ordinary housewife that has no job, which in my opinion is a very, very progressive person, because it's a job that is not recognized, but it's it's supposed to be very fruitful in society, because you are actually shaping human beings, future human beings. Mm-hmm. So I would take her and I would basically do the NLP processes. It's a 6-step session, and that is what I would do, is I would bring her to a point where she will start valuing herself, she will start loving herself, she will start honoring herself. There is nothing...
And I guess believing in herself,
yes,
most importantly.
There is nothing that you can do better for yourself than believing in yourself, and most of all, respecting yourself. Because what you perceive on the inside is what you project on the outside. So if you want respect, if you want love, if you want honor, you need to feel that within yourself. And this is what I do to bring about that changes.
Let's take that same scenario, the housewife, and she starts going for life coaching. She goes for 6 sessions, whatever, and she starts changing as a person. What are the people around her going to be seeing, and are they going to accept her? But before you respond to that, let's take our caller. Assalamu alaikum to you and welcome. Caller, are you there? Assalamu alaikum.
Salam. I'm calling to just ask a question on the television. I want to know how it works with the children.
Are you talking about too much TV for children? Is that your question?
Let's talk, yes.
All right. You're wanting to know if too much TV is bad for children. Is that the question?
No. How does it work with the children? How does she psychologically...
Okay. All right, fine. We've got that. Thank you. Will you please leave your name with the producer and listen to the response on air?
Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum for your call.
Okay, life coaching works very well with children. Any child under 10 years old, I will do a process called play therapy.
Okay.
And through play, we actually ascertain what is going on within the child's mind and then bring about the changes. If you are 10 years and older, then you are able to sit and listen, and I would listen to you and give you the responses and the opinions that I feel that you should go into. And I have a load of teenage clients as well, where they stuck in this little rut, or they plagued by bullying, by cyberbullying, by all of those processes that are going on in society today, abuse as well. And I would take that client and I would bring about the change that only you can do in your world, because you cannot change your world, you cannot change anyone around you, but you can change yourself, and that would bring about the changes in your world.
So if you change your behaviors and how you respond to people, they're going to start changing around you.
They are going to change around you. And to your question earlier, before the caller called in, I wouldn't take a client, like you say, the housewife, and make her into someone that is aggressive. There's a very fine line between being passive, assertive, and aggressive. And the balanced way to be is to be assertive. So it's to know when to go into an argument, when to retreat from an argument, what to leave, how to value yourself in order to bring out the positive responses within your world, within the people that engage with you.
So the people around you are not going to resist this change that they see in you through life coaching?
They will not resist the change, because the change will be positive. So hence, as I say, it will be assertive as opposed to being aggressive.
Just going back to the issue around children, interestingly enough, the first segment of the show this morning was with a educational psychologist, and we spoke about ADD and ADHD. Would you be able to help a child like that through life coaching if the child has got attention problems?
Yes. No one gets up in the morning and they decide to have a condition. It's basically a series of processes that come about to bring about those changes. With ADD, with ADHD, it's normally a chemical process, a chemical imbalance, or maybe the child is just very bright and one thought overtakes the other. So what we do with NLP is we slow down the thought processes. So the person is then, and it happens with adults as well, because then the person is able to slow down, complete one thought, and then go on to the other thought.
You spoke about 6 sessions. Is it possible to have 2 different scenarios? The one being that within 3 sessions, a client would have mastered the technique, or after 6 sessions, another client will still not have grasped the technique. So does that mean that you stop with client number 1 and continue with client number 2? How does it work?
Well, the 6 session process is normally very structured. So in each session, I would know exactly what I need to do with the client, and I would tailor the sessions according to the client's individual needs. So in your first session, when I speak to you by your body language, by your image perception, by what you don't say, by what you tell me, I already know what I need to do in order to get you to that productivity. And very rarely will a client tell me that, in fact, it's never happened where they say, okay, 3 sessions and then we're done. So it always goes on. And very often, in the way that you would maintain your hair or your skin or go to the gym for your body, you would maintain your mind as well. So I would get a call 2 months later or 3 months later, and that would a client would tell me, I need your help again. And then I would, because the curveballs of life always happen. Life always throws you the lemon. And basically what I teach you is to make lemonade out of that lemon.
Okay, so the skills you teach, obviously the client will have at their disposal for life.
Yes.
But I presume they'd have to practice on it all the time.
Definitely.
Can you give us examples of one skill, for example, that you'd ask a person to keep focusing on and how to play it out?
Okay, somebody, for example, that is plagued with anxiety, I will teach you through NLP breathing exercises how to bring your creator into your thoughts so that your thought processes slow down and then you're not plagued by stress. We do certain exercises that will teach you how to center yourself. So it's very much holistically based. Although NLP is scientifically based, but my approach takes science and holistic behavior and merges it together. So the result of that is surrendering to the will of your creator, letting him take over, and realizing that all of this is so temporary. Stress as well, like how they say, and this too shall pass.
Yes.
That is my philosophy.
Okay, and this works for 10-year-olds and above?
Most definitely.
All right. How about people that are so set in their ways? Is it going to you take a 40, 50, 60-year-old?
Yes.
How, would you have to work harder and longer with them to start? I should imagine it's about kind of breaking old habits and forming new habits.
Yes.
Does it take lots of hard work to do all of that?
Basically, what I would do in the very first session is I would ascertain by, like I say, your non-verbal behavior, what it is that you would need. So I would go into that specific need that I think is lacking or that void that you have, and I would verbalize it. So automatically that person that is dogmatic in their behavior will be like, okay, this woman knows what she's talking about because she's zoning in on my void, on my weakness, on what is limiting me from further growth. And I don't believe that there is an age limit to learning. There's never an age limit to learning. And as our Prophet ﷺ said, seek knowledge, seek more knowledge. Knowledge is power.
I'm talking to Razia Mohammed. She is a life coach. We're talking about how you can change your life through life coaching to get the best results for yourself. We will continue the discussion right after the ad break, inshallah. Welcome back to the last 15 minutes of the show this morning. Let's talk with me, Julie Alli. I do hope you've enjoyed what we've had for you so far on the show. Right now we are talking to our life coach, and if you have any questions or comments, we're happy to take those. Now we've already reserved two giveaways for the 2 callers that had called in earlier. We have one more giveaway, so if you'd like to qualify, or if you just want to call in and make some comments or suggestions, we're happy to take your calls. Still to come in the show, we're going to talk to our guest, our lovely guest here. We're going to talk about her book and what exactly is life coaching? How can it enhance your life? We're going to hear about that in a minute or two. Let's take our caller first. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the show. Caller, you're on air. Please go ahead. Hello.
Hello.
Assalamu alaikum, brother. Welcome to the show.
Walaikum salam.
Who am I speaking to?
Mohammed Yusuf.
Mohammed Yusuf, what are your thoughts this morning? Would you like to say something?
Do you work with children who are drug addicts, and is there an institute that you guys by any chance work with directly?
Brilliant question. Thank you so much for asking that question. We're going to cross over to our guest and let's hear her response. Shukran very much indeed. Leave your details with our producer. We're going to send you one of these hampers in the course of the week, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum to you. Great question. I think something that I didn't even think about, and it's a huge problem in our community.
I am a certified substance abuse counselor as well. And then I use life coaching techniques. So I work with people like Anwar Jiva, and then I have worked with Nishtara before. And together with life coaching techniques, NLP techniques, we actually take the person we go to the grassroots of why they are taking the drug. Because like I said previously, no one gets up in the morning and decides, I want to be a drug addict, I want to be an alcoholic, I want to engage in all the vices that are out there right now. There's a series of processes that force you to take whatever it is that you choose to take. So
no
what I
one made you do it, it's your choice, but there is obviously something going wrong in your life for you to resort to perhaps wife beating or drug addiction or alcoholism or something to that effect.
And we are very much products of our childhood.
Sadly.
We are products of our childhood, each and every one of us. So what we do is with NLP, the first thing that I would do is to go back into your childhood. And when you go back into your childhood, you will actually discover how your subconscious mind controls you and how it is that your subconscious mind turns out the same processes over and over again. For example, the abused will become the abuser or go on to become further abused because it's your sense of normal. So yes, to the caller, I do NLP techniques with substance abusers, and alhamdulillah, it's been very productive.
And you've had success stories from there?
Yes.
How many sessions would you actually have with a person suffering from an addiction, whatever it might be?
Well, the sessions would vary because the problems are not the same. So very often the person will decide that they want to see me once a week, until what I do is wean them off me, in the sense that here they find a non-judgmental adult, someone that's not judging me, someone that's not telling me what to do, someone that's listening to me. And that can become addictive as well because they have addictive personalities. So what I do is I use NLP, I help you to get to the root of the problem, and then with that what we do is I wean you off me, and I show you how to become interactive, to integrate into society, and to be a productive individual.
And it's important to break that attachment because you become a crutch to them, and you don't want that to happen.
You don't want the crutch to be formed in another way.
You want to teach them to become independent, strong human beings, inshallah. And you are saying to us this morning that you can overcome your addiction, whatever it might be, with the right mindset and with lots and lots of dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Anything and everything is possible.
With that in mind as well, I believe that the substance abuser's family needs counseling as well, because now we're going to turn this person around, we're going to make them into someone that is thinking differently. So they are going to go back home and be treated in the same way that they have been treated previously, and that will be counterproductive to the therapy. So I suggest that the family or whomever that the client is living with needs the counseling, family therapy as well.
Very important.
Yes.
Okay, we're going to come back to coaching. What else it can do for you and what life coaching is not recommended for. But I see you have an interesting looking booklet
Yes.
on your lap. Tell us about it. Won't you show it up to the camera, please?
Okay, I have written a book and it's called See the Change. So basically it's self-explanatory in the sense that it's motivation on another level. It's a small book, yet it's a wealth of information. I suggest that each and every one of you get one of these books. And once you read it, there's a whole lot of quotes, there's a whole lot of stories in there. There's my introduction as well. And with this year, you are guaranteed to want to come to me, and you are guaranteed to want to be the change that you would like to see in your world.
Inshallah. And where can one get hold of this book?
You would contact me, and I can either post it to you or I can give it to you physically if you are close enough as well.
Okay, great. Now, I know that life coaching has worked wonders for sports people. What and when would you not recommend life coaching?
When would I not recommend life coaching? There isn't an instance where I wouldn't recommend life coaching. Because I deal with clients on a divorce level. I deal with single parents. I deal with marital issues and discord. I deal with premarital counseling as well. Then we go to substance abuse. I have a few athletes that come to me as well for more further motivation. People that are in the limelight as well. It can be mentally and emotionally draining to your psyche to always have to put up that front and that face. So I deal with them as well.
Yes.
So I would not, I wouldn't be able to pinpoint an instance or a person that wouldn't be productive and susceptible to life coaching and just soar to greatness. Basically, we are here, we are put here as a test, but we are also here to see what we do with our lives. We are here to give dawah work. We are here to just produce and to serve humanity.
Alhamdulillah. Now, I know that it works excellently with sports people.
Yes.
And having said that, then, why shouldn't it work in other areas? And I know corporate, world leaders, corporate heads, etc.
Yes.
Also, lots of them go for life coaching to give them that extra edge, to give them the confidence to go out there and conquer their companies and conquer the world.
So
What is the trick?
I do that on a corporate level as
Okay.
well. I do team building and I do one-on-one sessions within the HR departments of companies as well. And what is the edge? The edge,
Yes.
the edge is that there's no secret to life. The secret is within you. And what I do is just unleash that natural potential that you have within you. I read a book once that said this guy went all over the world. He went to the ashrams and the Buddhist temples and the mosques and all over to seek himself, to seek the secret. And when he came to the end of his destination, an old lady that he interacted with told him that the secret is here
Within you.
You need not surf the world. You need not go anywhere. You need to look within you, because wherever you go, you take your mind with you.
True. Okay, then in closing, when we talk about life coaching, we talk about, it's really about changing your beliefs, changing your attitudes. Would you say that one has to, and it's not always possible, but is it really about always believing and putting the power of positivity in any and every situation and looking at the world through rose-tinted glasses? I'm not sure. Do you think that this whole notion around the power of positivity can and will and should move mountains, very especially in the case of our last caller talking about, can this work for drug addicts?
Yes.
So how do you get people like that to subscribe to the power of positivity? Can they be positive when the grips of a very deep and a dark addiction?
Well, I would say it's not about putting your rose-tinted glasses on. It's about taking your rose-tinted glasses off. And basically, in my master coaching, what I've learned is that you surrender to the will of Allah. You surrender to the will of God and you let Him take over. He is here to help you. He is here to be your friend. So basically, when you surrender, that is when the positivity of everything comes in. So when you look at a situation, it's not about looking at the glass half full or half empty. It's about being happy that there is a glass. Because I would say that the sky is not the limit. It's actually your thoughts that are your limit. So I don't give you an idealistic, wishy-washy way of looking at life. It's basically looking at life realistically, making peace with your past and living in the moment.
Alhamdulillah. And that's where we're going to end the show. Let's do our thoughts for the day. We'll wrap up with Razia Muhammad and wrap up for the day, inshallah. So on to our thought for the day. We know too well that our freedom is incomplete without the freedom of the Palestinians. The famous words of Nelson Mandela brings us to the end of our show this morning. Shukran to you, Razia Muhammad. To all our callers this morning, we had 3 callers and all 3 of you have qualified for our lovely hampers, 2 with compliments from AMCA and 1 with the compliments of Broadway Sweets. Thank you so much for letting us into your heart and your home this morning. Inshallah, till next Wednesday at the same time. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Ya hala, 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 حن قلبي على جمعة الخير هلا، حن قلبي على جمعة الخير هلا، يا هلا ويا